Welcome or welcome back. So what I thought I'd do, a bit of a Bingley bonus video. This, like I say, the subject at hand is of no particular thematic nature. So if you don't want to hear me drone on about how I came to end up as a YouTuber, in middle age, after a lifetime of service in Her Majesty's Constabulary here in the United Kingdom, if you don't want to hear some of that, feel free to move on. Right, so how on earth does a copper become a vlogger? Well, it's interesting in a way, thinking of police driver training and advanced driver training, advanced motorcycle training in the police. A part of that training includes commentary. You've got to be able to ride, stroke, drive and commentate at the same time, for obvious reasons. I mean, if you're pursuing a vehicle that's refusing to stop, say a stolen vehicle, you've got to be able to give accurate commentary. And a couple of reasons why you've got to be able to give accurate commentary. One is so other resources nearby, other police resources, are able to select the best route to get to support you as soon as possible, so they need to know where you're going. And of course there will be a senior officer, or should be, monitoring that pursuit, and that senior officer, and later in my career I became one of those senior officers. That senior officer's job is to decide whether or not an instruction to abort a police pursuit of a vehicle should be given. And there are all sorts of parameters to be taken into account, such as the time of day, the weather, the visibility, the road conditions, the volume of traffic, the presence of pedestrians, the likely or actual presence of children. And that's the health and safety side. On the flip side, there is what's the nature of the subject at hand. Are we talking about a serious offender that really needs to be caught, or are we talking about some local tow rag that's forever driving pool cars around the neighbourhood, and we know who he is and we know where we can find him, in which case there isn't much justification, particularly if it's during the day in a built up area. There isn't much justification in continuing a pursuit of somebody who you can identify and potentially can locate for a potentially relatively minor offence. There's no justification really in embarking upon all the risks that come with a high-speed pursuit in those circumstances. Aye, so that's why you've got to be able to do commentary. So folk basically who need to know, can know what speed you're doing, in what conditions and where, and make a rational, objective, remote decision. And that's important, because let me tell you, having done both of those jobs, you can get a little bit of excessive focus. You know, when the dog sees a rabbit, if you're driving a high-power police car, it's your job to catch bad people. Then a lot of the time your focus can be a little bit shall we say, too much through the prism of catching the offender, and you focus on the overall broader circumstances, is never going to be what it should be, and which is why you need somebody remote from the situation, remote and removed from the situation, without any skin in the game, to actually make a command decision and instruct an abort the pursuit. So any road up. So yeah, so how does an ex-copper become a vlogger? Well, one of the skills involved in vlogging is being able to ride, stroke, drive and commentate effectively at the same time. Now let me tell you, for YouTube vlogging, it's actually harder than chasing a nicked car. It can be harder than a pursuit, because think about it. If you're pursuing, say, a stolen car and giving commentary, you're giving commentary about what you're seeing. So all you're doing is commentating upon speed and what red lights have been gone through, and what side of the road the car's on, and what the weather's like, and what the traffic's like, and how many people are about. You only really have to comment upon what you are actually seeing. Whereas when you're doing like the sort of thing that I'm doing now, talking about something completely different to what's in front of me, you need to be able to split your brain in half and have half your brain riding responsibly and safely, and the other half of your brain entertaining you good people out there. So if you've not done motor vlogging and you think it should be a piece of cake, let me tell you, if you're going to do it properly, it isn't. So that be that. So hey, much respect and recognition to any of the YouTube creators out there, big or small, who do it this way, i.e. on the bike, on the fly commentary. Much respect to you, because it ain't easy. And that's why occasionally you'll hear me talking absolute bollocks. You'll hear me umming and ahhing and pausing, and some people do make reference to that. But let me assure you, that's a natural consequence of your concentration being necessarily divided into two areas. Aye. So that's got that out of the way. So how did 30 years served, and 30 years is, or was, the maximum service when I joined, the maximum sort of pensionable service. How does a cop of 30 years suddenly end up in retirement becoming a motor vlogger? Well, I joined the cops in 1983 and sort of progressed through the ranks and retired 30 years later, working in specialist uniform operations, sort of firearms, public order, operational planning, counter-terrorism, training, that sort of thing. It's what's called a non-territorial division. It provides a support function to the rest of policing. So that's where I ended up in the sort of final years of service. So I came to retire in 2013, and I retired literally 3 days after my 51st birthday. And as you can imagine, you can't really hang your boots up at 51. Well, you could, but didn't seem right to me somehow. I had 12 months off when I retired, did all the stuff that you do when you finally get that pension payout, your house extension and new motorbike, and riding up and down the country, all of that, carrying on, paying the mortgage off, all of that. Very fortunate position to be in, but You know, those were the contractual arrangements when I rocked up and sold my soul to Her Majesty for 30 years. That was the deal. But after about 18 months I got bored. Ended up working for the ambulance service for 6 months, driving ambulances right across Yorkshire. Not emergency ambulances, and I'd had enough of the blue lighting game, but transporting cancer patients mainly for their treatment, mainly out of St James's Hospital in Leeds, but picking people up right across the Yorkshire area, and really enjoyed that for 6 or 7 months. And parted company with that when summer came around and the hours didn't suit, and I really wanted to get out on the bike and all of that. And then ended up working for the for the funeral service for 5 years in various roles, and ending up as a funeral director. And that's a very responsible, very time consuming, long hours for not a lot of money job, but very rewarding in its own way, if you can imagine, supporting families in an hour of real need. So I did that for about 5 years, and then sort of had another bit of time off riding the bike, and then COVID came along. And COVID came along pretty much not long after I'd started this channel in earnest. I started it in a very amateurish way in 2018, but I'd go weeks if not months without uploading any content, and it was purely an endeavour aimed at giving me something to do and potentially entertaining friends and family and what have you. And just as I started to sort of get going proper, which would be around about the time I had the Honda Cross Tourer, COVID came along and pretty much shafted things. And then when we were sort of well into COVID and lockdowns and all the rest of it, I received a call from a former senior colleague in the police, and was asked to go work for the council, the local authority, on a 12-month contract as an operations manager, overseeing the local authority's response to the COVID pandemic. So sort of working together with the NHS and education and various other service providers locally. So I did that for 12 months, which was very enjoyable, very eye-opening. And when that contract finished, I just thought, well, now might be the time, if ever, that I'm going to really make an effort as a YouTube creator, without any great ambitions, it has to be said, to start creating a bit more content. So I set out to do that, and just over a year ago got up to 2,000 subscribers, which was a big motivator. And once I got to that point, I sort of felt an obligation really to put out at least 2 videos a week wherever I could. And so that's what I've been doing since. And it's been reasonably successful. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think at the time of recording this, the subscribership is something like 8,300 and odd, which is tiny by YouTube standards, and it's tiny by YouTube motorcycle lifestyle channels. I tend to think your threshold for a well-performing motorcycle YouTube channel is probably 50,000 and above subscribers, certainly 100,000. So like your Lamb Chops, your Mr. Darcy's, your Richie Vida's, Teapot One, all of these, and then your ones that are even bigger still, Missenden Flyer, Moto Bob, massive ones like Itchy Boots, but I think that's a little bit different, is Itchy Boots. It's I sometimes think with Itchy Boots, incredibly absorbing though it is to watch, is more about travel than it is about the means of travel. But her figures are absolutely phenomenal. What are they, over 2 million? I don't know. So yeah, so my target for this year is 10,000 subscribers, so please, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And if you think you're subscribed, please check you're subscribed, because you might find, for some bizarre reason, YouTube has unsubscribed you. And it's not just this channel. Old Uncle Stuart, and there's another 100,000 plus channel, isn't it? Stuart Fillingham. He's had those issues as well, so it ain't just me. It's the bigger channels as well. Have a check. Yeah, and how I actually got starting to do this actually was probably like most really, that through the winter months, about what, 6-7 years ago, maybe more, when I couldn't ride, I only had one bike back then, and that was a great big BMW K1600 GTLE. Just a big heavy lump of value, and I dared take that out in winter weather. And so to ameliorate the winter blues, I started watching YouTube motorcycle lifestyle channels, travel channels, and the one I watched the most and was the most influential was TMF, the Missenden Flyer. Because he'd be sort of one of the first, sort of at the vanguard of mainstream motorcycle vlogging for YouTube. And his format, his formula, if you like, was very much like this. It was onboard conversational video footage whilst riding his bike. And of course, whatever the X factor is, he's clearly got it, looking at his numbers. But that's what got me to thinking, I wonder if there's something to this. And like I say, for the first sort of couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and before COVID hit, I was just playing around with a job, really. But like anything else, the more you do something, the more familiar with it and the more comfortable with it you become, and the more creative you can become, and the more interested people get. But you've got to stick at it. That's what I've found. You've got to stick at it. It's a function of time, with some very rare exceptions, such as Freddie Dobbs and 1 or 2 others that just seem to rocket from day one for whatever reason. The majority of motorcycle YouTube channels with big subscriberships have been doing what they're doing for quite a long time, several years. I think TMS, what was he, 13 years plus he's been doing it. So it's a function of time, application, effort, consistency, and keeping up relevant content and avoiding the temptation which I may not have avoided today, and that is just posting up bloody drivel for the sake of posting something up. But what I try to do is, on the 2 that I post up per week, the Thursday morning and the Sunday morning videos, I try wherever possible to make them genuinely thematic content, something of a particular theme, whether it's a motorcycle review or a particular scenic route or an issue in and around motorcycling, current affairs or whatever, equipment, upgrades, doing bits and bats in the garage, that sort of thing. I try and make it something like that, and stuff like this where I'm just jabbering on and giving you the benefit of my take on the world. I always try and do as an additional bonus video, if you like. So that's the plan. Right, so we are coming here into Pateley Bridge, and let's see if my 2 subscribers from afar and Andy, Mr. Yorkshire Dale's Motorcycling Encyclopedia, are here. Speak to you in a bit.